Hello and welcome to Augmented Teachings, where we will talk about the things that will inspire us to think better, feel better, and in turn be better. I'll be your host, I'm Michael Jackson, and I have my co-host here, Brandi Pagano. How are you doing, Brandi?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here. And thank you for tuning in and listening to us on Talk 960 AM radio. You can find us on Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. You can also find us on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube.
Awesome. So I hope everybody out there had a good week, and we are here again to help. I mean, the real focus of the show is to help overcome judgment and fear one soul at a time. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like our basis for everything we do here on this show.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we don't realize, a lot of questions that we have been asked on the other side, and on the other side of the veil. And as an N.D.E researcher, I have been able to get accounts from people that have asked these questions from the other side of the veil, mm-hmm. and I can bring them forth now and explain a lot of the things that we have that are concerns now in our society and mm-hmm. on this planet. And one of them is judgment and racism, right? So one of the things that we can't figure out is how come some people are racist or judgmental or prejudiced, and some souls are not. And we can't really get a grasp on it. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it from the totality of what I've learned, it's very simple. So I'll use my own situation. Okay. And that is my father, who was a very kind, gentle man, had two parents that were very racist, right? But my dad did not turn out racist at all.
Even though he was brought up that way,
so right? It wasn't nature. It wasn't nurture. He actually went against the grain and was not racist. Mm-hmm. And he had two siblings that were racist, just like my grandparents.
Interesting.
And then there was another sibling that also was not. So two siblings were racist mm-hmm. and judgmental, and two siblings were not. Why is that?
Right.
And when we realize it's not nurture or nature, it's actually age of soul.
Ah, there's a third factor.
There's a third factor, age of soul. So the last show we had, we talked about how the purpose of life works, right? There's two purposes of life. You have your purpose of life for your vessel, which is to create experiences for God, because God is a creator and we are the experiencer. Mm-hmm. The second purpose of life is for our soul to work the puzzle of unconditional love. We bring it back until that soul has understood the purpose of unconditional love, mm-hmm. Understands the purpose of unconditional love.
Right,
right?
Completely. Yeah.
So one of the things that we do is we return again and again and again. And when doing so, we go from different genders, we go to different ethnicities, we return as different religions on different parts of the planet.
And we do that to know what it's like to have that experience, right?
To understand the struggle firsthand is mm-hmm. what I like to put.
Right.
And as we do so, we become more developed in our soul, mm-hmm. in our understanding of what love is. Because when we understand the struggle firsthand, then we're able to have empathy and compassion for other areas that we don't exactly look like or think like. Mm-hmm. So as I tell people, people that are racist, right? They just have not been that ethnicity yet. They just haven't gone there yet. Some souls are very, very young and have not had the opportunity to move around the planet enough to have enough samples of other ethnicities to be, and therefore are still living in fear and judgment of those other ethnicities.
Wow.
So, but it also goes with prejudices towards mm-hmm. religion also. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have a prejudice towards a certain religion, and sometimes you don't. You just don't, you don't believe in that prejudice towards other religions, right? It's because we work our way around. We're not here just one time. We always ask to come back if there's deficiencies within our soul development.
Right. And hearing you explain this so clearly, for me, mm-hmm. it really opens up a lot of perspective on how we pass judgment on ourselves and other people.
Yes.
And, I'm thinking about the word bypass. And just because somebody is a younger soul doesn't mean that they get a pass. It's like, okay, they're judgmental, they're racist, whatever that may be, because they're a younger soul.
Right.
They get a free pass to just act how they want.
Right.
How do we maneuver through that? Because then, sure, we don't want to pass judgment. We want to accept. But also, if somebody is doing, harmful things and the way that they're acting and it's harming another person because of their judgment, how do we not judge those actions? You see what I'm saying?
I understand. And sometimes it's very difficult to deal with, to see.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
For me, it is, especially as an empath.
Right. And I think once this kind of information gets out there and you will literally ask, when you pass out of this vessel and you go back home to heaven, you will ask to go where you had overly scrutinized in the past. So if you're overly scrutinized a certain ethnicity or a certain religion, you will ask to go there on purpose. And it's never done to you. It's done for you.
Right.
So that you can learn. Back home, there is no fear and there is no ego. So a person will say, I'm racist against African Americans. Okay. Back home, we're not African American, we're not white, we're not Chinese, we're not anything, right? We are just souls, beings of light. So, and there's no fear. So we'll ask to go where we overly scrutinized in the past.
To have that experience
and
for the
knowing
soul's
that when that
development,
becomes actually a basis of thought processes on this planet, then people will be more wanting to find solutions to their racism. And the more this information goes out, it'll start changing people. People will be looking for ways to look for camaraderie, to look for similarities instead of finding judgment and hate wherever they go.
And that's how we work the puzzle of unconditional love, as you say, by first having the understanding and the awareness, right? You tell me awareness is half the battle, right? Knowing is half the battle. And it's like once we're aware of something, then we kind of know what to work for. We work towards, I should say, and we know the why. Right.
We know the why. And there's so many ways to do that because I'm the why guy and you're the how gal, right? And you explain how people can actually work their way through and find commonalities, to hook up
the similarities
to join with the vibration of God.
Right. And that's what I do in my personal practice, is part of working the puzzle of unconditional love is knowing that we all come from the same source. We all come from that puddle of love. And I think of God as an energy and a vibration. And we are each individual manifestations of that frequency, of that puddle of love. It's like we are a drop in the ocean, but inside that drop contains the entire ocean. So it's this whole symbiotic relationship between us and God because we are a direct manifestation of that. So if we all come from the same source and we're all that vibration and all that frequency, then it's easy for me and a person like me to see that love within another person, within myself as well. Right.
When we come to the realization we're all manifestations of God, then it changes your perspective. Okay, if that's that person over there that looks different than me and thinks different than me is a manifestation of God. When I treat this person poorly or have bad thoughts about this person, I'm actually having about God itself.
Right. And I think in terms of vibration, so, if I'm in a state of gratitude and love and joy and bliss, right? I'm vibing high. Right. But if I'm thinking thoughts of judgment, fear, sadness, frustration, any of those things, it's actually going to lower my vibration, which is not in line with God, with the frequency of God or source or, first cause, whatever you want to call it, the supreme being, higher power. Right. There's only one.
It's all the same.
There's just different interpretations and there's different names for it. But we can put a label on anything. Like who says this is a table? I could call it something else, but we all know what it is. Right. There's one of these. And I think in working the puzzle of unconditional love, it really comes down to knowing that we are all the same.
We're all the same. We're all here working that puzzle in the same classroom. And there's so many, the last paradigm that we came from was wallowing in fear and judgment. Right. And a lot of scriptures and a lot of things were written during that time. And
because that was the mentality and the perception at that time.
At that time.
Yes.
And I'm here to tell you, realistically, you can listen to whispers from 2,000 years ago. or you can listen to whispers today.
Right.
And that's what you do, is you actually teach people how to meditate.
Yes.
Even in the Bible, it says, be still and know that I'm God.
Exactly.
That is meditation in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So you're shutting the brain down, and you're just using your emotions and your feelings to connect to source and getting whispers directly from God.
Right.
Instead of whispers from somebody 2,000 years ago.
And that's the thing about using our intuition is God speaking through us. It is our highest form speaking directly to this brain, which is our ego.
Right.
And so part of the book that I wrote, The Big E Power, is working with our brain, working with our ego, and really using the tools of mindfulness and meditation and others too, but those are the main two, because again, you know, when we are praying, we're speaking to God.
Right.
When we are meditating, we're listening to God.
Right.
But first, we have to turn down all the noise that's inside of our brain, that's inside of our ego. You know, people talk about that monkey mind. That monkey mind's always talking.
Yes.
And sometimes we need tools to bring that down so that we can hear those whispers from God.
Right, exactly. Because sometimes I'll be in a great frame of mind, everything's going great, and then I'll slide over and hit the news, and I'll read something that just upsets me, and it throws me out. It throws me out for 10, 15, 20 minutes.
You're out of balance,
I'm out of balance, and I'm getting angry and frustrated. I'm like, wait, this isn't our first rodeo. This is a classroom. Not everything is bad as it seems, right? And it's okay. This is part of the process. This is part of the process of our society and humanity reaching enlightenment, which takes a very, very long time. It's not something that happens overnight.
Right.
And I bring myself back down, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I have to do mindfulness to get myself back, and then I'm back in alignment, and then I'm happy-go-lucky again.
So quickly before we take our commercial break, mindfulness is really paying attention in the present moment and not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future. And there are so many visualization techniques and tools within mindfulness that get us into this present moment. Because sometimes, you know, those, again, pain, fear, anger, they're taking us out of the present. Because if we're thinking about the future, we're usually having anxiety. If we're thinking about the past, we're usually having anger.
Right.
You know, not all the time, but a lot of the times. You know, if we're anxious about something, it's because of something that's going to happen in the future.
Right.
You know, and we're so fixated on that. But really,
right.
if we can just look in the moment and take a breath and slow down those thoughts,
Right.
slow down the breathing, then we're more calm, we're more in the present moment, and we can actually focus and think so much better. So thank you so much for breaking that down, Todd. That was really beautiful.
Thank you for explaining the how.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. So, and thank you to our listeners. You know, we've got a lot of support going, and it's really growing. And again, you can find us Augmented Teachings on Talk 960, which you're listening to right now, Saturday at 9 a.m., Sunday at 7 a.m. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube, and connect with us by email if you like. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at augmentedteachings@gmail.com, all lowercase and all one word. Thank you for being here. And now we are going to take a short break to share about one of our Spotlight sponsors. You're listening to Augmented Teachings on Talk 960. This show is sponsored by the High Desert Center for Spiritual Living in Apple Valley, and they want to let you know that they're having a Healthy Spirit Fair on Saturday, April 22nd, 2023. There's no admission fee. There will be vendors, prizes, speakers, and lots of things addressing the mind, body, and spirit connection. Visit and see what the High Desert has to offer in integrative, complementary, and conventional practices. The opening ceremony is 8:45, and the closing ceremony is 3:45. If you're interested in becoming a vendor or have any questions, please email at hdcsl@gmail.com or call the office at 760-242-2302.
And welcome back to Augmented Teachings. So last week, we left with the cliffhanger of, do we have free will, or is everything predetermined?
Which one is it?
Well, it's both, right? And I'll explain. So when we return back home, after we leave our vessels, essentially we die, right? We will see where we need to have the most growth, right? Wherever that is, wherever we had the most lack in our development, we will choose to plan out our lives, right? Like, people are like, oh my God, we're coming back. Yeah, but you spend so much time in heaven, because time in heaven is circular. Here on earth, it's linear.
Right.
So you may spend 10,000 years in heaven. It's only a few months here. All right. So it's way different. But what we do is we plan out our lives, but it's a loose plan, right? So what we do is, okay, we need to be born here and learn these certain things, to be born as a woman or born as a man, or born, this ethnicity, or born, with these parents, so I can learn this. Say you were very prosperous and you abuse that prosperity. You want to pick parents that are more economically challenged, so you can learn empathy and compassion for those who are poor. You know what I'm saying? So we move around depending on where we need to learn the most.
Right, because we experience to have the understanding, right?
Okay. And we set that into motion, and we leave that up to source, up to spirit. All right? So we make the plan to do what we need to do here, but it's loose. How it's done is up to God. So it's a tit for tat. If we decide to turn left, then the plan changes and evolves a little bit here.
Right, because the variables change.
The variables change. If you go right, the variables change it. You may marry this person, and then the variables will change. If you marry this other person over here, the variables will change. If you have 2 children or 4 children, the variables will change. But the same learning will still happen. So, and God knows every single aspect of what you'll be doing. Every potential is known. God knows if you married the first person or the second person. If you became a school teacher or a secretary or a trash man or a carpenter. God knows wherever you're going to go, this is what the potentials are. But does not know what potential you'll be picking for yourself.
And that's where that free will comes in.
Free will, but it's still God adjusts so you learn the things that you came here to learn.
I like to think of it as volition, which my interpretation of volition is the power to choose, which is a little bit deeper than free will, because I think of free will for me, and my understanding is, I do what I want. But volition is the power to choose. And when we can use that power consciously, that's when we're working and co-creating with God.
Nice. So you're proactively choosing to make good decisions for yourself, so that the other side of that, which is the proactive side, the reactive side, will be positive for you.
Well, I believe that we live in a cause and effect universe, and this whole reality is based on cause and effect. So everything I do, every action, every thought, everything that makes up my choices, there's going to be consequences. There's going to be a reaction. There's going to be an experience, an effect, right?
Right.
And so I use that, okay, there may be some things that are predetermined. I'm going to learn this lesson. I'm going to go through this for my soul's development.
Right.
But how I choose to go through it really changes the whole experience, because am I going to go with it with the understanding that, hey, I do have free choice and I can choose to respond or I can choose to react. What am I going to do? And that's going to determine how I develop as a soul and how I get through those experiences, because I've already declared several years ago that this is my timeline that I clear up the most, that I need to for my soul's development. Long before I met you, I was already on this spiritual journey of development, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the why until you came along just, 8 months ago. And in these last 8 months of having this conversation with you live on our podcast, now on Talk 960, in our private conversations, it has really opened up so many doors inside my own mind of understanding. And I get to live my life so much easier, I guess, with now, because I have the awareness of the why.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is sometimes we can't get past this certain part of our lives because we haven't accepted the fact that we have to make a change somewhere. So that thing that we had to learn, the check mark, one of the check marks we had to get past in this incarnation, in this lifetime, we haven't done it yet. So therefore we can't get to the next thing to learn. So we keep wallowing in the same energy and keep making the same mistake over and over and over. Which is fine, because with infinite love that God has, God also has infinite amounts of patience. So you can make the mistake over and over and over. Like I tell some people, I say sometimes a person will have to be an alcoholic for 10 years before they overcome it, right?
Yeah.
Some souls have to be an alcoholic for 10 lifetimes before they overcome it.
Yeah.
But we all overcome it eventually. All paths lead to enlightenment and to love. Love of others and love of self. But it takes time. So don't be too hard on yourself, but know that it exists.
It takes effort and determination as well as time, because those 10 years can go by and they still didn't learn their lesson just because of time.
Right.
So I think of that, we can speed up that time, or we can make that time stretched out based on our free will, based on our choices that we make.
Right.
Do we want to consciously continue to do the same thing and expect something different?
Right.
It's
exactly.
like, we can't, we could drive ourselves crazy by doing the same thing over and over and over, continuing those habits, but expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm.
That can drive somebody insane. I think that's the definition of insanity is,
Right.
So.
And I think a lot of people don't realize they're doing the same thing over and over and over.
But
They're
they don't have that
making the
awareness.
same mistake of not self-love, of judgment of others. And they keep running into the same roadblocks over and over and over and over, because you have to, and that's where I think your teachings come in. When you meditate, you might get those little pieces that connect, that you need.
Absolutely.
Oh, and you wake up and you get a little bit of a download. You're like, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. I want to try this.
Yeah.
Because you connect with the other side. You connect with your guardian angels, which, by the way, we all have guardian angels. We all have several, and we choose them beforehand. And they help us, guide us from one chapter of our lives to another. This is from the testimonials of people that have died and come back. As an N.D.E researcher, this has been prevalent in almost every single N.D.E that I've read.
Oh, and in so many religions and philosophies and ways of life, there is a lean in onto the divine, whether you call it guardian angels or, your ascended masters. Jesus is an ascended master, because the entity that is Jesus has transcended this physical experience, but some people lean into the teachings of Jesus and they still ask Jesus for assistance in this lifetime.
You can.
Just like we can with any guardian angels. My grandmother, I can be driving down the road having something and I'm thinking about grandma. I get happy and I'm like, Grandma, help me get through this.
Right.
And if I feel something or I have a new thought, or even if it just makes me feel good and now I feel happy because I connected with my grandma,
Right.
guess what? Now I just raised my vibration.
Right.
So now I'm more in line with the frequency of God, which is love.
So I'll explain something for some people.
Okay.
And that is, when you do have a loved one that passes over, they can leave a little piece of their soul to add to your collective of guardian angels. And that is something that we do all the time. So both my parents both passed last year. And I know that they left a little piece for myself, for my brother, for my son.
Yeah.
Both of them did.
Yeah.
To watch over us, to make sure we're doing okay, to add the collective, and that extra little help helps tap things into the form that it needs to form into. You know what I'm saying? Taps us to a little bit to the left when we need to go left, taps us a little bit to the right when we need to go right.
Right. And all of our experience helps shape us. And when we can know that there's always more to life than what's happening in the physical, then we can lean into those things. Sometimes people place value on a lucky penny and they pick it up and they're like, oh, this is a lucky penny. Well, what is that? What really makes that lucky? It's the value that we place upon that, right? And so we've talked about in some of our previous shows that there's no one path to enlightenment. There's no one path to God, or I don't know.
That's why it's called the puzzle of unconditional love.
Exactly, because it's not a game. It's not really a path. It's a puzzle. And each of us have different pieces that we need to work that. And that's where that soul development comes in, because I came in here in this incarnation as Brandi in this physical vessel with certain pieces of that puzzle that I need to work. You as Todd came with the same thing. And, all of us as individuals, as humans, we all come here with our own set of puzzle pieces to fit together. And that's why we can't really place judgment on another person, because we don't know what their soul is here to develop as or through each experience. And that, for me, is part of working the puzzle of unconditional love.
Right. So, yeah, if you look at it, we're going to spend hundreds of lifetimes in this classroom on
Earth.
On Earth. That's a norm. Right? How we're going to do that is going to be so varied from one soul to the next.
Oh, absolutely.
Where we start, where we end, where we have the most difficulties, where we have the easiest time, it's all going to be different, and we pick variables that are so different and unique that the chance of somebody having the exact same puzzle, work the same way is nil. It's not going to happen. And that's what makes our soul so special.
Yeah.
That's why God made so many of us, is because there's so many different ways to do it. And we're going to explore every single one of those ways.
Well, there are so many drops in the ocean, you know?
Right.
Going back to what I was saying about, we all come from the same source and we are all, individual fragments of that source. And when we can choose to remember that how I clean up my part of the ocean, right? How I clean up my drop through my soul's development and how I choose to live and how I choose to embrace love. When I return back to that puddle and I bring my drop back to that ocean, it's going to be more clean.
Yes.
And that ocean of love, which is God, is going to be cleaner and more pristine and more crystallized. And that's my purpose of life. That's what drives me in this human incarnation, to be that love that I want to bring back home for us all to enjoy when we are out of these physical vessels.
Yes. And you and I both have different ways of doing it. I always try to bring humor to the situation whenever I'm meeting a person for the first time, or somebody I'm interacting with on a daily basis. I try to bring humor to lighten the gravity and to raise the vibration of that interaction, making it a memorable, positive experience. You have a bubbly personality, and you just make everybody light up when they see you anyway. So you already have this gift innate because you've been here. This isn't your first rodeo.
One of the things that has helped me so much, Todd, is you reminding me to always keep love and laughter in my heart and keep moving forward. So hopefully you've enjoyed our show today. If you want to reach out to us, again, please email us at Augmented Teachings or find us on Facebook and YouTube. You're listening to Augmented Teachings on Talk 960. You can find us on Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. Thank you and have a great time. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.